Hey there! On today's episode, I'm going to teach you the basics of the new miniatures game, Marvel Crisis Protocol by Atomic Mass Games. My name is Nate, and welcome to the Gamers Guild. As many of you know, the game has only just been revealed a little over a week ago, and it is still months away from release. How can I show you how to play? Thankfully, AMG has already provided us with their cool rulebook, some character cards, and a couple of objectives that were on display during the reveal of the game. These official components, along with some pieces that have been scrounged together to be placeholders, will be enough to show you the basic rules and even give us enough to get a test game or two in before we can get our hands on the good stuff later this fall. So, before we get to rolling of the dice and moving of miniatures, let's take a look at what you need to be able to play. To play, you're going to need a 3x3 play space, 10 models and their stat cards, the MCP dice, an average of 12 terrain pieces, which should mostly be card building size, 18 tactics cards, 3 secure crisis cards, 3 extraction crisis cards, and of course, your opponent. When setting up the battlefield, try to keep terrain at about range 2 away from the other terrain, or 3 inches. Then roll 5 MCP dice for initiative or priority. Priority determines who gets to pick which crisis deck they would like to draw from, among some other things later in the game. I wish I could tell you more about these cards, but we haven't seen very many examples. The priority roll winner is determined by who rolls the most crits, wilds, and hits. If there is a tie, whoever has more crits is the tiebreaker. If crits tie also, then wilds become the tiebreaker. The winner gets to choose which of the 2 crisis decks they would like to select from, the secure deck or the extraction deck. And the non-priority player will get to draw from their own deck of the other crisis type. Each player then draws 2 of the 3 cards from their respective decks and secretly chooses which one will be half of the mission for the crisis at hand. Each player then reveals their selected card at the same time. Players then set up the objectives on the table following the map guide on the crisis card's reference. Unfortunately, something else we don't have quite yet. The priority player then gets to choose which of the 2 threat levels from the crisis card will be used for this game. Its importance will be revealed here in just a second. The non-priority player then gets to pick any of the 4 available board edges to be their deployment zone, and their opponent sets up across the board from them. Now it's time to build your team for the mission at hand. Now, from the 10 models you brought to the table, you get to pick from these heroes and villains based on their threat value, or points. You can only have points equal to the current mission's threat value. The threat value of a character can be found here on their card. Things to keep in mind. Heroes and villains get to mix and match freely. I mean, how many times have we got to see Spider-Man and Venom team up, Magneto unite with the X-Men, or maybe even a hero get brainwashed? While team-ups are endless, you can earn an affiliation by having more than half of the team's members share an affiliation. A squad can only have 1 affiliation, but by having an affiliation, some characters such as Captain America or Red Skull then have a leadership ability to boost your team. If at a later point we have an Iron Man with a leadership ability for the Avengers as well, and you have both him and Cap, you have to pick which leadership you will be using for the mission. The last thing you need to do to prepare your squad for the mission is to pick 5 of the 18 tactics cards you brought to the table. These cards are powerful abilities that will help power up a hero or villain, bring the pain to your opponent's characters, or get your character out of the way of some damage with an impressive dodge. For example, let's look at this card. The first row is just the name of the card. Below the name and the awesome art is the affiliation needed to play the card, if there is any, what kind of card it is, then what the card does. You can play as many of these cards in activation as you want, but each of them are a once-per-game ability that gets discarded after use. After picking your cards and characters, you are ready to play. Now, each player reveals the team tactics cards and characters they have chosen to use. Then, the player who won priority places 1 model within their deployment zone, which is 6 inches from their table edge. Players then take turns placing their models onto the battlefield until all models are on the table. Next, we move to the power phase. At the beginning of the power phase, each character gains 1 power. Power is a resource that your heroes and villains will spend to make attacks, use superpowers, and activate those team tactic cards. Power is earned most commonly from the power phase or taking damage, but a little bit more on that later. After everyone has powered up, players resolve any effects that happen during the power phase, starting with the priority player. Then resolve any effects from the crisis cards that trigger during the power phase. And now we get to go to the good stuff. During the activation phase, starting with the priority player, you will activate one of your characters, which will let them perform 2 actions. If you want, you can even take the same action twice. Those actions are move, attack, use an active superpower. The other kinds of superpowers are either reactive or innate. The reactive ones can only happen after a condition has been met. For Black Widow, this could mean being attacked and allowing her to counterattack. The innate superpowers are more like passive, like Spider-Man's being able to wall crawl or Iron Man being able to fly. The last kind of action, though, is performing a shake. This will let your character shake off a special condition like bleeding or being stunned. But let's break down those first 2 actions a little bit more because there's a lot more to be explored. The movement stat for a character is found here on the character card and comes in 3 ranges: short, medium, and long. Each has a corresponding template. For example, Black Widow has a long move symbol. As you can see, Black Widow can move using the long movement tool like this. Something to keep in mind is any character can also downgrade their speed if they needed to make a sharper turn or to get to that perfect spot. As well, you don't have to move the full distance of the tool. If a character needs to move over or up terrain that is larger than them, they can, but they must reduce their speed to the short stick. You can find the height of a model right here. However, if you are moving across something about the same size as your character, there is no reduction because, let's face it, Captain America can vault that car as easily as I can open a can of Dr. Pepper. But now that we've discussed the move action, let's talk a little bit about attacks. An attack must always have a target, and that target cannot be an ally. Each character so far has at least 2 attacks to choose from. Let's break down Black Widow's pistol attack. The first icon we see is the range of the attack. This will show us how far the attack can reach. So Black Widow is at range 3. The next number is the strength of the attack, or how many dice you will see in this roll. In this case, the strength is 4. The last stat is the amount of power it takes to use the attack. For her pistols, the power cost is 0. So now we can see across the street an Iron Man armor that has been hacked by Ultron or whatever, and we can now have Black Widow use her attack for a second action. She will use her pistols to shoot at Iron Man. We see that he is within range 3, so we prepare her 4 attack dice. Then we get to see how much damage Iron Man's going to take, and we look at his defense dice. Attacks and defense are broken into 3 categories: physical, energy, mystic. Black Widow's pistol attack is physical, so we then look at Iron Man's physical defense, 4. First, the attacker will roll their dice. MCP uses a unique D8 system. Unfortunately, we haven't had those dice yet, so we're just going to use this chart to interpret our rolls. The 8 represents a critical hit. A crit counts both as a success in both attacks and defensive rolls. As well, each time a crit is rolled during an initial roll, you get an extra die. The 7 represents a wild. A wild also counts as success in both attack and defense rolls, as well as it will trigger additional abilities off of that die face. 5 and 6 represent a hit, which counts as a success for an attack. 4 will be a block. This counts as success in a defense roll. 2 and 3 are blank, they don't really count as anything. And a 1 is a failure. This face will not add to your successes, and it is not allowed to be re-rolled or modified in any way. Now that we have selected our attack and our target, you pay the power cost for the attack, if there is one. The attacker rolls their dice, followed by the defender. Before anything else happens, we resolve the crits. Then, you modify your dice. Black Widow doesn't have any modifiers, but Iron Man will use cover to change one of his blanks to a block. Cover happens when the following conditions are met. There's a terrain feature of the same size or bigger that intersects any part of base-to-base measurement. The defender is within range 1 of the cover, and the attacker is not within range 2 of the defender. If all of the above are true, the defender may change one of their dice to a block. After modifying your own dice, you may modify your opponent's dice if you have an ability that allows for that. Then, we count the attacker's successes versus the defender's blocks. 4-2 in this case. So, as it stands, Iron Man will take 2 damage because successes get through. There is 1 damage per success. But Iron Man has an innate superpower called Invincible Iron Man, which reads, whenever Iron Man takes damage, he reduces it by 1 to a minimum of 1. So, Iron Man takes 1 damage and gains 1 power. Gaining a power from damage isn't a special ability. Every character will gain a power for every point of damage they take. This is a great way to represent the characters who get back up swinging. Unfortunately, 1 damage is enough to meet his stamina level as he has already been taking a beating earlier this turn. When a character's stamina is depleted, one of 2 things happens. If the character is on their healthy card side, they get what's called a dazed token. If they were on the injured side, though, they are removed from the game. Once a character has a dazed token, a few things will happen. If they were holding any objectives, they are now dropped within range 2 of the model, and your opponent is the one who gets to decide where it's going to go. Dazed characters cannot move or be moved, and cannot be targeted by attacks or affected by special rules or superpowers. As well, they are unable to activate on this turn if they have not already activated. They are not able to help contribute to scoring, and they lose all of their superpowers for the duration of the stun, or daze. At this point, let's say all of the models have activated. We now go to the cleanup step. Players will now score victory points based on what the crisis cards are. Then, resolve player effects and crisis card effects if there are any. Any characters with a daze token will remove all of their damage, special conditions, and the daze token. You then flip the character card to the injured side. Keep their power, though. If the player who activated the last character has the priority chip, then you give it to your opponent. Finally, remove all activation tokens from the characters and it starts all over again. The game ends when one of 3 conditions are met. 1 or more players has reached 16 or more victory points, the players have played through 6 rounds, or all models of one team have been removed from the battlefield. In the first 2 scenarios, the winner is the one with the most points. If both players are still tied, the game continues until one player has more victory points than their opponent. If you are the only player with models left on the table, you win. This has been a quick rundown of the basic rules for the game. If you want to dive further into the rules for Marvel Crisis Protocol, there's going to be a link down in the video description that will send you straight over to AMG's website. That's all for me in this video. If you have any questions about the game, characters, or how to get a proxy game in or 2, find me on Facebook or just comment down below. Hi, thanks for watching this episode of the Gamers Guild. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like. I'm not sure what it does for YouTube, but it makes me feel good inside. If you want to make sure to see more videos like this or about this game, hit that subscribe button. That way you don't miss anything else that's coming out. Until next time, remember, keep on gaming.